Well, so I just realized that I didn't actually record a video, even though I did an entire walkthrough. So here we go again, and this time I have practice. So we'll do the whole thing over again, and hopefully I'll actually get a video file this time. So, like I said before, I haven't done anything with this yet. But that's going to be the next thing. What I have done is I've put in all of the stones and I created 2 raised garden beds in which I planted tomato plants in rows of 11 plants spaced 1 foot apart. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 times 11 is 44 tomato plants. I also put in these stairs, which I didn't really want to do, but my homeowner's insurance policy required me to put in stairs, so I just put in some really simple stairs, and now I like them, so I'm glad I did it. But they're just simple stairs on these steel risers. It was really easy, and they serve the purpose. So now I have stairs, and that's great. So, yeah, last time I think I had stopped about here or so, but as you can see, I've long completed putting in all of the stones, and yeah, let's just take a walk around here. So this is one raised garden bed here. Both of these raised garden beds are 3 feet wide by 12 feet long. And these tomato plants have grown really tall. Some of them are over 6 foot. So that top bar, that's approximately 6 feet above the soil. So all tomato plants above that bar are approximately over 6 feet. So they're all doing really well. You don't see many ripe ones because I harvested just last week, and so mostly only green ones, but some of them are getting really big. Look at those. Yeah, those are nice. I put in a drip irrigation system because it turns out that tomato plants need really consistent watering, or they get a problem called bloom end rot. And that's where they get this big dark area on the bottom of the tomato fruit. So if we look at one of the bottoms here, there would be this big dark spot on the bottom. That's called bloom end rot, but as you can see, they're not doing that anymore. So I managed to correct that by putting in a drip irrigation system, and the emitters are also conveniently spaced 1 foot apart. So each plant gets its own personal drip irrigation system. So it drips right on the roots of each plant. It's really convenient. So then that comes here. These are 1/4 inch lines, and then you can insert them into this 1/2 inch pipe. And then the pipe goes to my outdoor water outlet here. And there's a timer. And as you can see, it's currently off because it rained recently. You can see that the soil is sort of dark. It's still wet. So they say you should put mulch down, but I didn't want to do that because I wanted to see the state of the soil, to see how dry it is. And so, you don't always have to follow the rules. So by seeing the state of the soil, I can turn off my drip irrigation and wait for it to dry out and then turn it back on. So that's how I prefer to do it. Okay, so that's drip irrigation. That's how I do that. And I have a T there so that I can also use my hose with the sprinkler. Now, if you remember, it's just as an aside here, remember how there was a barren rectangular patch out there? You can still sort of see where it was, but that's all nicely filled in with grass now. So I put some grass seed, and you really have to water it frequently. It needs a lot of water, and that's what I did. That's why I needed that, to keep watering that grass seed, to fill in that barren area. And then also this was barren. This is still kind of patchy, but it's definitely much improved. So leftover rocks from digging around. Let's see. So here's a different view of the project. It's kind of nice. So that's another trellis. I built that just to make sure that I had all of the parts that I needed for a third trellis, because I wanted this trellis to match the other trellises. And you never know when a vendor might go out of business or discontinue a product. So I wanted to make sure I had all of the parts I needed for this long in advance, just in case a vendor went out of business or discontinued the product. So as you can see, my plan is to build a third raised garden bed, and the front will be aligned with the other two, but it's going to be not quite so long. It's going to be 9 feet long instead of 12 feet, and that's because I need to leave some space for this heat pump. But yeah, that's where it's going to be, right there. And then actually I'm going to use 8 of these stones after I remove them in the front garden. So I have some plans for the front garden that I might show in a later episode. But I've been working on the front part as well. I've got about, let's see, I got 11 tomato plants in the front. So I have a total of 55 tomato plants. So here's some more. It looks like a really nice tomato. That one looks really nice. And these are Cherokee purple tomatoes. So they're not as bright red as the normal kind of tomato. Instead, they have kind of a purplish color, purplish green, greenish color. But I like them better. I think they're much tastier than the regular tomato. And they're especially good with cooking. They are delicious. There's nothing better than vine-ripened tomatoes. No chemicals of any kind. The only thing I use is, wow, this one's big. So the only chemical I use is not really a chemical. It is onion juice. So I will chop up onions and soak them in water, and then use the onion water to spray on the tomatoes to keep the flies off. Oh, so you can see what I mean by bloom and rot right here. Here's an example. This is just what I was talking about. This one has a little bit of bloom and rot on the bottom. Yeah, it's never perfect. You just keep trying to do better. Yeah, so because of the nature of the trellis is that these pieces just rely on friction to stay intact. It's very easy for a storm to blow these pieces apart, and then when they become disassembled, it can become a real mess. So I put these bungee cords to make sure that a storm is not going to be able to blow this apart. And then I have rope here to hold the whole structure down and also keep it together this way. So far, since I've used the bungee cords and the rope, I haven't had a problem with storms blowing it apart and then creating a big mess. So I think I solved that problem. Hopefully. We'll find out when the next storm hits. Yeah, so this is my next step with this project, and this is going to take years because before I can actually do this, the first step is to have this, and this is probably not something I'd want to do myself because it involves disconnecting and then reconnecting the heat pump. So it's probably going to be expensive to have some people to disconnect this, rotate it 90 degrees so that see, I don't like how this gets in the way, and there's really no good reason for it. We could rotate this 90 degrees counterclockwise so that connector would now be right here, and it would be just a short distance to there. And then all of this space would be free to walk through. But most importantly, I need to make sure that these feet are no longer resting weight on the 24-inch stones, because I plan to I'm going to remove all of these stones, this whole column of stones here, and I'm going to dig a trench underneath them, and then I'll use a perforated drainage pipe in that trench so that this pipe will no longer be visible. It'll just be a nice flat surface. And then, well, before I actually do that, I need to talk to the HOA. I need to get approval from the HOA to remove this fence. And my neighbors have already agreed that I can remove this fence. So it just comes down to the HOA approval now. And instead of this fence, what I want is what's called a retaining wall. So it'll be about maybe that high, and it'll help prevent erosion. That's mainly it. It'll just help prevent erosion. But without this fence here, this area will get more sunlight. And that's why this wasn't a high priority, because with this fence, the plants here are too much in the shade and they won't grow as well. But so that's the next step for this project. Let's see. Maybe I should just do like a walkthrough here. So typically, the way I take care of my tomato plants is I will come over here and I'll start on this one. And then I'll just gradually work my way around here. Let's go down this corridor. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. So in this area, this is composting. This is a 65-gallon compost tumbler. And this is where I recycle all of the branches and leaves that I've pruned off of the tomato plants, and plus any other organic matter that I feel like putting in there. Not really woody stuff, because that takes a long time to break down, but I will put leaves in there and kitchen scraps. I'll fill these up with leaves, and then put those leaves in the soil in the early spring. And then this is another sort of improvised compost bin. I drilled holes in the bottom for drainage, and then I also drilled holes in the top, but now I use this top to hold all of the clippings while I'm pruning. I'll just push it around in front of me as I go from plant to plant, and I'll get a big pile of leaves and branches, and then I'll come back here and I'll just sort of chop them up and put them in this bin. So that's my composting system. And I've got my storage shed. Long term, I want to get rid of that storage shed. But that's way too much work for me. Now that the pandemic is long over and I'm working full time again, I just don't have a lot of time for big projects. So that's going to have to wait for a long, long time. But this, I think this one is something that I could handle incrementally. So first I'll rotate that, and then next I'll get approval from the HOA to remove this fence and put in a retaining wall. That might take like 2 weeks. That'll be a 2-week vacation. And I won't even touch those stones for a while, and then probably I mean, this is going to take like a couple of years because I have to do it incrementally and whenever I have enough time to actually put in the work. So don't hold your breath on this one. This is going to take a while. So, and this area here is going to be kind of it's my work area. This is where I do a lot of cutting, wood cutting. And then also I could set up some folding tables, and this would be a nice place to eat lunch or dinner. And without the fence, there'd be a nice view of the field and the tree. Yeah. And let's take a look at how it looks like from this side. Alright, so that kind of gives you guys some ideas of the current state of the project. As you can see, I've made a lot of progress. And sometime I'll show you what I did in the front garden bed, because I'm also working on that as well. And I'm also thinking about including cucumbers in addition to my tomatoes for next year's crop, because cucumbers are also sort of a viney climbing plant, and I think they might do well on this system. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. All right. Yep, and but this is going to be the next thing, and then I'm also going to figure out what grow lights I need and maybe some seed heating pads in order to start my crop as early as possible indoors. So I can get started right away next season. I really planted these very late in the season. But look how tall they are. Many of them are well over 6 foot. So just imagine how tall they would be if I started early. Okay, hope you enjoyed. Have a great day, everyone.